So here I have a 2017 MacBook Pro configured with a Core i7-7920HQ, 16 gigs of RAM, and AMD Pro 560 graphics, so this is pretty much the best laptop that Apple currently offers. I think it's a known fact by now that you should not buy a MacBook Pro primarily for gaming, and that building a desktop is the way to go, but for those who already own a Mac and you just want to know if it's possible to game on this thing, this video is for you. For the first game, I'm going to start off with a lighter title. Here, I have Team Fortress 2, and at 1920 by 1200 with high settings, I am getting well beyond 60 FPS. I think that was pretty obvious considering this game is almost 10 years old now, but the reason that I showed this game is because number one, it's free, number two, it is one of the few games that I actually play, but more importantly, it is graphically intensive enough to be able to say that all lighter games and esports titles like League of Legends will play perfectly fine on this thing. Next, we have Rise of the Tomb Raider. Now, this game actually came out in 2015, so it's a little bit of an older title, but still relatively demanding. The numbers here really aren't all that impressive, especially considering I am running the highest end specs that Apple currently offers for the MacBook Pro, and it's just not the greatest experience. Even when you crank the settings down to lowest, I am still unable to get 60 FPS, but here's the thing. I'm going to sidetrack really quickly and say that a couple years ago when I didn't have a powerful desktop, I would find every single way to make games look as ugly as possible just because I wanted to play a certain game. The reason I say that is because I understand some people might consider anything below 60 FPS as unplayable, but considering the people that own MacBook Pros, I don't think cranking every single game to max settings with 60 FPS is something that they're stressing over. With that being said, if you don't care about having beautiful graphics and you just want to play Rise of the Tomb Raider for the story and the gameplay, then yes, it is playable, but even at lowest settings, you're still going to see occasional stuttering, so keep that in mind. So following that, we have Mass Effect Andromeda, and I really enjoyed this game. Now, this game was released earlier this year, 2017, but despite that, you're actually getting some pretty good frame rates here without needing to crank down the settings. At 1080p medium settings, we are hovering around 50 FPS, which really isn't all that bad, and if you lower a couple of settings, you can easily get 60 FPS without making the game look too ugly. If you're looking for a nice single-player game with a sort of Halo vibe, definitely check this one out. Lastly, we have The Witcher 3. Honestly, there's nothing to say here. With a maximum of about 32 FPS on 1080p low, I'd recommend you just avoid this one. This game is just far too taxing here. Before I get to the conclusion, I'm just going to throw on some extra benchmarks for a couple other games. I'm not going to go in depth and talk about them individually, but it really just depends on what game you're playing. If it's something a bit more optimized like Battlefield 1, Grand Theft Auto 5, or Rainbow Six Siege, you can actually get some pretty good frame rates on 1080p high graphics despite them being AAA titles, but if it's something taxing like Deus Ex Mankind Divided, Doom, or Rise of the Tomb Raider, then you're going to get a subpar experience. And to reiterate, yes, all later games will play perfectly fine on this thing. I tried a couple games like A Story About My Uncle, Warden Melody of the Undergrowth, and Ori of the Blind Forest, and these all played perfectly fine even at 1080p max settings. Now, I'm not sponsored or affiliated with any of these developers, but these are all fantastic games and I recommend you check them out if you haven't already. The graphics and the soundtrack with Ori and the Blind Forest is honestly just wonderful. So the takeaway is this, MacBooks just aren't meant for gaming, but if you already own a MacBook Pro, then yes, it is possible to get a good gaming experience with high frame rates on 1080p high settings. Just watch out for the more graphics intensive games like The Witcher 3 and Rise of the Tomb Raider. If you guys enjoyed this video or maybe even found it useful, a like would be much appreciated, and with that being said, thank you guys very much for watching. This is Infinity Labs, and I will catch you guys later.